In the meantime, Gail Trotter of the Independent Women's Forum, which would be a great name for our boy band, except it's got the name Independent Women's Forum, with us on the show. Gail, how are you this afternoon?
Great. How are you doing, Cam?
I am good, and I am so glad that you're with us again. You have just been writing up a storm about the issue of women and firearms, and I'm so glad because the mainstream media really would want, I think, every American to believe that every gun owner out there is, no offense to whom I'm about to describe, a 70-year-old guy with a big beer belly and suspenders, and that's who owns firearms in this country.
That's right, and that's not the case, and it's funny that it's increasingly going the other way. And if you look at who owns firearms now and who is getting the training necessary to start learning how to protect themselves with firearms, it's increasingly women. And I think the more that this is talked about and women realize that this fundamental freedom is under attack and is really threatened, then they're going to continue to realize that they need to get out there and get trained on this and make sure they take advantage of this constitutional right.
Yeah, no, I agree. And by the way, as I said, I have nothing against 70-year-olds with beer bellies and suspenders. You've got your same right to keep and bear arms that Gail Trotter does. But I think again, it's the busting of these stereotypes and seeing more and more of these women speak out. Glenn Beck had a program yesterday in which he had a panel of women who were victims of violent crime, who did not support gun control. They supported being able to protect yourself. Amanda Collins, who was on this program last week, was there. I'm so glad that Amanda's story is getting out there. But, we see a lot of politicians, Gail, just sort of summarily dismiss the idea that a gun is useful for self-defense against a sexual predator or a home invader. Or as Joe Biden said, ladies, just use a shotgun, just fire it up in the air and you'll be fine.
Which is horrible that he would say that, because he was directing his wife to do that when she didn't know that there was an actual threat, and whatever goes up has to come down. So if you're just shooting something blindly, it could be a real safety risk. So not only is he not giving good advice about what types of weapons women should use or not use, but he's also giving bad advice for being in a situation where you don't know what the threat is. And how the press doesn't pick up on this and really give it to him right back at him, it's just astounding to me.
Well, it is to me, too. I guess I think a lot of it is, honestly, we're just seeing a lot of covering for the vice president, for the president, by the press. I mean, this, again, if this were Dick Cheney, if this were a Republican, if this were Mitt Romney, or if this had been, Paul Ryan, this would have been all over Morning Joe. It would have been, Rachel Maddow would have gone like a week playing the clip every night, and it would have been making fun of this guy who supposedly is the expert, supposedly the guy who's going to be in charge of writing our nation's gun laws, and he tells his wife to commit a felony in self-defense. Now, if you're not mocking that, if you're not, and I don't even know if Jon Stewart at The Daily Show has even talked about that. I mean, if you're not covering this, look, at this point, you're not the press. You are a propaganda wing, and you've abdicated your responsibility of reporting in favor of covering for your guy in the White House.
Well, at least you said a shotgun and not a whistle or to vomit or urinate on yourself.
Yeah, but again, it was the shotgun as a noisemaker.
Right.
I mean, it was aim it in the air, fire both blasts, as he said. Which, by the way, is going to leave you, if you're looking at it, blind and deaf, and you've alerted the intruder where you are, but now you can't see the intruder. I mean, not only is it a crime to do what Joe Biden suggested in Delaware and in Wilmington, it could get you hurt. It's bad. It's a bad bit of advice, Gail.
It's terrible. It's terrible advice, and for him to be out there becoming an expert on women's self-defense while at the same time trying to limit a woman's options for what she thinks is good for her self-defense is just laughable if it isn't so dangerous to women. And I have a new piece out at the Daily Caller specifically on this idea that a woman should have a supported right to choose self-protection. And I go through some of the things that the critics have said, like studies that they've cited, and the studies are flawed. they're debatable or outright discredited, and these are the ones that they're like all the people who oppose the Second Amendment rights are all on message, and they keep repeating this in the echo chamber, and they're just not looking at the actual studies and what they say because they're false, they're discredited.
So, Gail, as you keep writing about these issues, and you talk here about the research that found, for instance, reduced gun ownership results in increased criminal home invasions,
right?
And the lethality of attacks on law-abiding citizens, and yet you see this sort of political disconnect where it's weird. I mean, the arguments we're hearing from, like, Joe Biden's argument was basically because I say so.
Right.
Senator Feinstein yesterday said, your personal pleasures don't outweigh the common good. It's this very weird argument. It's not based in fact. It's not really even at this point based in emotion, although we're still seeing these very emotional videos. It's almost based in dogma, Gail. Like, why don't you believe us? Why won't you listen to us? They just get so angry and they're so insistent that they're just right. And that seems to be their argument. I'm right.
They are saying that. They're basically saying you just need to roll over and take it. And
right.
Their suggestions for defending yourself are ineffective. So if you go back on their argument, they're not saying that it's wrong to defend yourself from violent attack or rape. They just want women to not be able to actually defend themselves. So they're saying use weapons like pens or whistles, but don't use weapons that are actually effective. And I just can't underscore this point enough. Guns make women safer. Over 90% of violent crime in the United States occurs without the assailant having a firearm. Over 90%. So they're using the statistics about gun violence, deaths from guns, to say that these rights should be taken away. But the reality is there's over 90% of crime, violent crime, going on in this country without firearms. So in those cases, if women have firearms, if they have the right to choose to have firearms, they're able to reverse the balance of power, and the firearm becomes a great equalizer.
Talking with Gail Trotter of the Independent Women's Forum. And Gail, do you think we're going to continue to see more women speak out about this?
I think so, and I think as more people realize the threats and understand that the surveys and the studies that are being used against supporters of the Second Amendment are false and they don't represent the true facts. I think women are waking up to this, and even women who are not gun enthusiasts at all, they're not hunters, they're not gun sports enthusiasts, they realize that this is a fundamental right. I think we'll continue to hear more women speaking out.
All right. Well, listen, Gail, really appreciate you coming on the program this afternoon. Thank you for your time, and look forward to talking to you again.
Thanks for having me, and good luck with that boy band.